In my last tutorial, I have talked about JPA, Hypernet, and object relational mapping in general. Now in this tutorial, we will continue our journey from there, and I'll show you how to create an entity class in Spring Boot application. So let's directly dive into coding. This is a new Spring Boot application which will be providing the history of music. I have created a new database named music_history, and this application is connected to that. To create a new entity for our application, I'll create a new package here and name the package as entity, and under the entity package I'll create my entity which will represent the table in my database. So for my music history application, let's consider first creating a database table named song. So I'm thinking about a database table which have a primary key ID, a title, a column for the name of the artist, the year of publishing, and that's all. For now, let's consider we have 4 properties and we want to create an entity for that. Okay, so I'm going ahead and creating a new Java class named song, and in the class I'm annotating it with entity so that Spring Boot understand this entity class which represents a table from the database. So since I've created this class as an entity, I'm having an error. It's saying that all entity should have a primary key. So to set primary key, let's add a new column first, private long ID, and annotating this as an ID so that Spring Boot understand this is a primary key for this song entity. Since this is a primary key and the type is number and I'm using MySQL, so I also want to set auto increment for this. So for that I have to add another annotation called generated value at the generated value. For this annotation I'm passing a strategy which is generation type dot identity. So for MySQL, to set auto increment, you can use this. This generally means it will generate a new value for this field every time we want to insert something new, and identity means this will be unique. There are some different approaches. In MySQL we have auto increment, but in Postgres or Oracle we do not have that. In that case we can use sequence. So for now let's stick to identity. I'll explain this in my later tutorials. So I've created our primary key and I'll have another column in my table as private string name, and I'll have another field as artist, and finally last variable long year. Okay, so those are the full 4 column I want to have in my song table. Now I have to have getter and setter, or additionally to string and equals hashcode, etc. One thing I want to mention here is under the entity annotation in the class I can add another annotation called @table, and I can pass a value here name which will be defining the name of this table in the database. So if I want to have a different name from what will be automatically generated by JPA, I can do that. Same goes for the column. I can annotate it with a annotation called @column, and I can pass a value. So by default the pattern is if you write a class name as song at song example, then the corresponding database table name will be song underscore example. Everything will be small case. And if you want to set artist name here, the corresponding column in the database will be artist underscore name, everything smaller case. So if you are okay with this, then you can follow this capitalization, or if you want to have a specific name for a specific column or the table, you can also use the @table like this, and you can also have the name of the column like this. Okay, so since I'm okay with the default setup for JPA, I'm keeping it as it is, removing the annotation, and And last thing, in the application properties, I have to add an property so that every time I run my application, if there is no database table exist for this entity, JPA will automatically generate that data definition language or DLL and execute it in the database. Okay, so the property I'm adding in my application properties is spring.jpa.generate-dll equal to true. Now if I run my application, it should create a database table in my database. Okay, sorry, I didn't create my setter and getter method yet. So for that, IntelliJ code menu and generate, and click on getter and setter and select everything by clicking on control and click on OK. If you continue learning in Java environment, you will find a library called Lombok, which actually provides annotation to automatically generate everything, including this getter and setter. For now, I'm using my IDs getter and setter. Okay, now let's go to my database ID. I'm using Navicat. Here in my database, currently I do not have any table. Okay, so if I refresh here, I cannot see anything because this database doesn't have any table. So now if I run my application here and check out, refreshing, here I can see I have a new table called song. Let's see what is the schema it generated. It actually created a new table called song and with 4 column: ID, artist name, year and name. So it created this and executed in the database and also set the primary key ID. The long is created as big integer, not null, and auto increment is also set as we have selected generated value. And strategy of the generation is identity, so it will generate unique identity for each value. So if you use a different database, you will be using a different thing here, like auto or sequence. For now, I think we got the idea how an entity class works in Spring Boot. In my following tutorial, I'll show you how to create a repository and how to set up the relationship in between 2 different tables, let's say 1-to-1, 1-to-many, or similar thing. So if you have any question or have any difficulty understanding this, you can put your comment down below. I'll be happy to answer. And if you learned something out of this tutorial, please consider liking my video. That will motivate me to make more helpful content. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next tutorial.